Hey, hey, welcome to another episode. I am Dagny.
And I'm Damali.
And in this episode, we wanted to discuss
Yes.
with you the depictions, illustrations, and notations of the experiences of neurodivergence and some disabilities in film. We noted that there is now seems to be more representation happening in certain places, and we wanted to highlight the ones that we felt are on going in the right direction in terms of what kind of representation it gives, as well as what we feel, what kind of influence or impact that could be making on the audience and like society in general of seeing these types of characters come to life. So Duma, I'm going to throw it back to you. And could you also share with us why we felt that this is a topic that we need to be discussing?
Okay, but thank you for throwing it back. I always throwing it back and forth. We thought it'd be interesting, especially with us, since we've kind of, I guess, recently discovered we're neurodivergent, which is something we didn't know when we were, children, obviously. And it's interesting that while more information about neurodivergence just come out, it seems there's more movies and stories being told about people that are either neurodivergent or people that have disabilities in film. And I do think we're seeing a lot more of that and more positive views of it. And then also, like, I guess more characters who are the main characters. I feel like sometimes, like in the past, maybe you would have characters who are neurodivergent or have disabilities, and they're like either like the butt of the joke or something, or they're making fun of them in some way, or they're like a side character, or they don't have as much representation. And now it seems that's like the main point of it. So we're seeing a lot of that. And another thing is the representation. It's not only actors who are acting as if they have a disability or are neurodivergent, but we're also having people who in real life they are deaf, or real life they have certain disabilities, neurodivergence, and they're able to play the role. And it's really cool to see that introduced in film. And we thought about some of the more like recent movies and things that have come out. And then sometimes it's not always like obvious, I guess, because there's some shows where you won't know what the character, like, because with neurodivergence it can be internal, right? Like you can't actually see, when you see the person, you don't know what disability they have, what they have, but internally is deeper. So like some things that have come to mind is like the accountant with I guess I'll read through some of the movies or shows that it was prominent. So there's the accountant with Ben Affleck, where I think he is autistic in that movie. They have another one that came out too, and there's also a K-drama called It's Okay Not to Be Okay, where we also have an autistic character, and that plays a big role. And then we have a Sign of Affection, which is an anime, which is about a girl who is deaf. And then there's another one called Josie the Tiger and the Fish, and the girl is in a wheelchair. And there's another recent film I saw where on a plane where it was a deaf hostage and an officer who used to be able to hear, but then he had an accident and then he became spoiler alert I don't know what the movie is called. So but anyway, he becomes deaf. And so him seeing the distinction between someone who's lived their whole life being deaf versus someone who just became deaf was really interesting, I think, to see in the film. And then there's also another K-drama called Attorney Woo, which also the main girl is autistic and but very like independent, living her life, and it's really cool to see how she deals with the world. And some other ones. There's also A Quiet Place, which I think which is funny because like the point of the Quiet Place movie was to not make a sound, and the girl is deaf, so that actually works out. And in real life too. And then two more is like I think there was an actress in Supernatural. I think she played Eileen, but her real name I think is Shoshana, and she was deaf in Supernatural, but turns out in real life she's also deaf. So it was cool, and it's cool to see. And I think they even did a meeting or like a Zoom call with like her and one of the main actors. So it was like really cool to see them kind of discuss. Obviously, they had like an interpreter, a signer kind of thing. So I thought that was really cool. And then lastly, one that was more a dystopian one, which was kind of creepy because it happened in 2019 before COVID happened, so kind of weird. But it was called like Perfect Sense, And I don't think I'm spoiling too much in it, but in perfect sense, basically everyone starts off with their senses, and then some kind of disease comes out of nowhere, and everyone starts losing their senses. Like all of their senses start going away. So obviously that's really cool to see that happen. And so overall, those are some of the movies or shows or things that kind of made us think, oh wow, we're getting a lot more of representation of different types of characters, and these characters are not like, they're not like victims so much in, I mean, they have to deal with stuff and deal with the world around them, but like they have autonomy, they are independent, they have their own story. There's some that have their own love story, like they have their own lives, things that they're doing. Like they're not just like a token character or just put there for some kind of humor type thing, and or not being. I know sometimes in some older movies, like sometimes we would use certain language or derogatory terms to make fun of people that have different, that live differently. And I think it's cool to see more of that, like happening, where you're seeing like, oh, there are people that are like this, and they go through the same stuff. Just because they're in a wheelchair or just because they're deaf, it doesn't mean they're not living like similar lives than us. They just have this different part that they live with. Um, and I guess I'll stop there for now. But I mean, I know there are some debates that go on, right, about like, is it okay for people who are not deaf to act deaf, or should it only be deaf people doing it? Like, is it okay for, because I know there's been some issues with that too, where it's like, maybe I'm sure there are a lot of actors or stories of people who like don't have to act it out. But I do also appreciate how some of the actors do seem to do research on the people of these disabilities or types of if they're on the spectrum, and they really seem to do their research really well. So it's acted like it. They didn't just like do like a subpar job of showing that. So I just thought that this topic would be interesting to talk, because I'm like, oh, I've seen a lot more of that in films. And it's funny that it's like, while like a few years ago finding out we might be on the neurodivergence, spectrum, and then to see more of the representation, I think is kind of really cool to see. And I think that's the first thing I'll say about that in why we decided to do this topic, because it kind of seemed really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to reiterate, we put both, we're not saying neurodivergence is a disability or that disability is a neurodivergent thing. It was more of like, well, actually they kind of, in this context of film, they go together in terms of we're seeing on both sides representation changing, of not being just a token person in the film, or possibly only being stereotyped in one particular way. So that is why we decided, okay, well, we can bring both of them into the conversation, even though technically they are not the same. They're not the same category in terms of what they go through, but they're in a similar category of that their representation in film, and even wider understanding for people who are not involved in these two categories. It seems like there has been more work or effort to try and bring that up or bring that out. Yes. So I thought we can first go with, because I do have some notes on like how I feel some of that could be done better, but let's first go with like what actually highlighting what is good on the right direction for these sorts of things. So we can start with some of the examples that Damali noted. First, with the accountant. So Ben Affleck's character is the main character. The protagonist is autistic. And for me, I felt that was the first time in a film that I saw like more of like behind the scenes of what an autistic person could possibly be going through from very young to when they're older. And noting how not only was it about him and what he had to balance or deal with, but also the people who cared about him, his family, of how him being that did really influence his family, and which family members could stay and deal with it and which family members actually left. Sorry, there might be spoilers in here, but like literally some of these films are kind of old. So if you haven't seen it, maybe this will inspire you to go check it out now, because it didn't come out yesterday. You've had some time to see it. Sorry, not sorry. So for example, in The Accountant, I felt it was very important for them to show what a possibility of what an autistic child goes through. And being that you're he was the only divergent person in his family. So seeing how his parents dealt with it. The mother in the story, the mother was overwhelmed and she ended up walking out on the family. While the father, even though he too possibly was overwhelmed, but he was, I believe he was military. And so he decided that he's not going to take this as a disability, because they had two sons, one of them, the main character, who was autistic, and the other one who was not. So he made a point of he will train and raise them as if they are equals. And even though you see glimpses of that, that meant it was actually very difficult for the autistic child, but it also benefited him, because he then was raised to believe that what he has is not a disability, in the sense of it's not something that is stopping him or would restrict or limit him from who he needs to be. And also tried to enable him to be able to take care of himself, so he would never be fallen victim of another guardian that possibly could abuse him. It also then enabled his brother then too to not end up being like, oh my gosh, it's such a burden that my brother is autistic. It was kind of like, no, we already know how to handle it. We know what cues to give the brother. We know what to not do. We know how to help him when we can see other things are going to trigger him. So it made it so that his dad and his brother were very much his support system. Now, of course, because it's a Hollywood movie, we have to bring in some plot twist that turns out people are assassins, and it's not just regular military stuff that they were being trained for. And that makes it more of the adventure, which I thought was really awesome, because I'm not sure if we've seen in film an autistic person who's not always like a patient or a victim or like the comic relief. And all of those are very touchy subjects, which in this entire episode, I also want to do a disclaimer that we're definitely not trying to be disrespectful to anyone. So we understand that some of this can be touchy, but the bigger goal of the conversation is, one, we want to give credit and applaud the trajectory of trying to bring more representation to these things, which possibly, hopefully, is allowing more people to be more understanding of people in reality who have to deal with these. So in The Accountant, it was really, really cool to enable a character who's autistic to be such a badass sort of deal. And in the beginning of for majority of the film, you actually don't know, because initially the character is, I only use one fork and one knife. I only use one plate. He's an accountant. He only goes to work. He does his job and he leaves. So you get the sense of, okay, routine is very important for him and the way he handles himself. When the story continues and now he has to save people and stuff, and all of a sudden you know that he actually is trained as an assassin and his brother is also a major assassin and everything, the routine still sticks. And it's actually the routines, or the way he does his routines and the way he's very particular about details, is how he ends up rescuing people and end up solving things. And so I felt that was very clever of them to decide to do that, because the way the film was being hyped up or promoted, it wasn't here's mental health awareness, autism awareness month. It had nothing to do with that. So to be honest, all of us went into the movie not even knowing that neurodivergence was going to be the protagonist of the film. And then you end up leaving like, oh, wow, I didn't even know. Actually, that's really awesome to have that in this movie, because we were all expecting just regular action-packed little bit of dialogue and that's it. So I felt that was such a beautiful example of how impactful film can be when you're responsible with it and really creative with it. And also choosing to not box it in. Because if it was a film that they decided to promote, this is a film for autism people, there might have been some backlash, as well as you might have not sold as much, because people automatically have a certain idea in their mind. Well, now you were able to broaden the horizons for people to understand, actually autism is not the idea you have in autism, or the one type of person you have been exposed to is not it. And actually they also deserve to have different types of stories told about them as well, not only for others who are not on the spectrum to see it, but even for those who are, to be able to be reminded that you too can be a variety of things. You too can experience a variety of things. And it doesn't have to be in this silo of just you and other autistic people. It can be within different types of people as well. So that's what I'll say to start. In terms of I'll start that in terms of what I liked. Yeah. And then afterwards we can go into where's the rooms of improvement, but we'll start with that.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked the account. They did. I mean, they did a second accountant as well, which of course the first one was the better one, but the second one was still very good. And I also like the whole, yeah, like how the because chaos is the main thing, right? And I think that was the dad's main way of raising his kids, so that even if there's chaos, even if stuff goes crazy, you can still function and do what you have to do regardless. And I think that was really, especially when things kind of hit the fan, and things weren't the way they were. And I thought the movie did a good job of showing like when he was struggling and how he himself had to like no one was like helping him deal with his, to deal with how he views the world, right? Like he has his own like ways to like self-soothe kind of thing or calm himself down or things like that. And it was really cool seeing that and having and like other people reacting to it in different ways. And even like there's another character too that I think it was Anna Kendrick's character where she was not autistic, but it seemed like later in the film they kind of get to kind of like she can kind of relate to him even though she's also not, autistic. So and the way he deals with like chaos and things, I think was a really like cool idea. Um and I like how they portray that. And it's true. I think when I first started watching it, I don't think we knew that he was autistic. I'm not sure if that was no. So like that I was like, oh, okay. And then they really, but I like how they didn't just like throughout the show, they would show different memories and would go present, past things and really show and sometimes in subtle ways of how his autism affected himself and affected people around him. And I think another big deal is his brother. Like I think the relationship between him and the brother and like how the brother is with him um because of how they grew up and because of like and then you see the way that he reacts to his brother because most people he's kind of like not really interested in people, right? Because of the way he is, he's not very, except for that one, and even that one Anna Kendrick's character at first, he's kind of like, leave me alone. I don't want to do it. Like, I stay in my lane and that's it. But with the brother, you really see more of like, there's a lot more emotions that you see that come up. And I think it seemed to me anyway, that they did a good job of showing that. And yeah, I was so kind of like, wait, he's in a set. It's just so like, where did this story come from? Like, it's so interesting how they did that in such a really cool way. And I guess the main takeaway is that like it wasn't he wasn't made to be a victim and he wasn't like a hindrance. Like it wasn't like some like he had some disease and there's something wrong with him. Like no, he was able to live his life and can function and he could find routine and find things within the chaos that happens without it, taking over kind of thing. Um, and then I think the other one I think that was really well done. I mean, all the I feel like we don't have time to go over every single one because there's like so many. But I did really like Attorney Woo, which Dagny also needs to freaking watch already. I watched it, and Dagny's taking forever to watch. It's great, and I can't wait for the second season. So it's a K-drama called Attorney Woo, and the cool thing is that the girl that's the autistic one is a lawyer, and she's like the top. She was like the top of her class, very top, like kind of thing, and of course, as the show goes on, people sometimes have an issue with that kind of thing. And the way she communicates is different, the way that she like does things is different. And then she even has like a love story that happens as well. And it's just really cool to see that be portrayed like in film. Um and I think also what was the other one that was that kind of oh yeah, well I guess I can go to Sign of Affection. That was a little bit different because that was like um what's it called? That was Sign of Affection is the other one. It's an anime, Sign of Affection, and the girl in the anime is deaf. So that one's a little bit a different one. But I like in the show she has autonomy. She can do her own things. There's a guy that like and that she ends up falling in love with, and he falls in love with her. And he's not deaf, but like I think he loves learning languages and stuff. And so he ends up like learning her language and like they fall in, and it's like fine. And I mean she has a friend that's kind of concerned for her, but I think the main recurring theme of these shows is like the sense of autonomy and how like they're not a victim because like they're not like they can experience life to the fullest regardless of whatever their like in this case her being deaf like it doesn't get in the way of anything. And I think we're seeing like a lot more of that um in film. And it's nice to see it, because then the story, it's not just because that's kind of like the focus shouldn't be like, oh, this person has this thing and like, oh my God, what's wrong with them? No, it's a story. You know what I mean? It should be a story, right? And yeah, I think it's really interesting to see that.
Yeah, so I do like that note as well in terms of like the right direction that I feel these representations are going. Now, another addition to that, or another layer to that I would like to see more of, is that I've noticed that yes, it's great that there's this wave of, okay, new information, new awareness, new representation for neurodivergence. But, or in addition to that, I do feel that a lot of it just focus on autistic, as if that's the only option or like the only experience. So even though for us, myself and Damali, we're like, oh, great, awesome, neurodivergence in the film, but it's still not our experience because like neither of us are autistic. So I think there is still so much room to also try to illustrate the other parts of the spectrum in ways that go beyond this person was in a mental health institution and that's it. Or this person is comic relief because they have this and for some reason other characters find it funny. And that is something I always find a little touchy, which I think is cultural for some people. When you have like, there's a character who, and this maybe we can go on either side. You have a character who has a stutter. And in some cultures, that's the comic relief. Like it's funny that the character is taking a while to say the word or the sentence, and that's supposed to be funny. While in other cultures, that's actually quite disrespectful and rude to make fun of somebody with the stutter or make it like it's funny that it takes them a while to say something. And I guess as we continue pushing this, like, oh yeah, we can have characters that have these different experiences, always gauging about where the line, I guess, of where the humor can go and not go, or where the so-called trauma should go or not go, is something that I guess we will have to see how that evolves in a way. But the main thing in terms of really I don't want to say hyper focusing, but really primarily just focusing on this character's autistic. So now we have our neurodivergence in the film, when there are so many other layers too, or other parts of the spectrum that I think could also be just as beautifully illustrated with how complex it is to be dealing with different things. Whether it's you have the character is having difficulty with how long it takes for someone to understand that the characters have difficulty with reading because the letters are going backwards or something, or with the numbers because it's going like this, or everything else is okay. But whenever they have to interact with people are like, but why can't you why I don't understand why your face is looking, I don't understand your expression. When it's, no, they're not autistic, but part of the spectrum that they're on is that, well, their face is not performative. So while they're waiting for you or while they're trying to express something, their facial expression doesn't show it. I think there's quite a lot that can be done with those. And again, I feel the focus for that is not so much wanting the spectrum to be part of entertainment, but it's kind of wanting, and also not wanting to use it as a token like other demographics, but wanting to possibly utilize entertainment to be a bit more educational so that we don't have issues of hate crimes happening, or we don't have issues of the person is autistic and that's why you call the police on them because you couldn't understand why they're behaving the way they're behaving. If we had more just in film, because it's possible there's still quite a lot of people who actually don't know somebody personally who is on the spectrum or just wasn't paying attention enough to know that they possibly were. If they could be like, yo, you remind me so much of my favorite character in this show. Oh yeah, did you know that the character actually is, oh, for real, the character's, oh, that makes so much sense because I totally related with how this character was going through the adventure in the show. That really can make such a big impact, I think, or have a positive ripple effect. But again, that would take time in terms of us having to have that for like a very long time for that impact to happen. But again, just to close off on that note, I feel there's still so much in the neurodivergent spectrum that could be illustrated, even the parts of it of like, we actually don't understand, we don't even fully understand autism, but there's just pieces of it that we can put it in this character in this movie or these shows, as in we can do this, the stuff that typical neurotypical people complain about or take notice of like your facial expression, the way you're expressing your emotions, how particular you are about certain routines. That's all neurotypicals noting what they see about an autistic person, and that's what we're seeing in film. So there's even more depth that can go into it of trying to actually illustrate the perspective of the autistic person, even though so much of it still has yet to be fully defined or explained. Yeah.
Hey, I think I definitely agree with that like we need more. There's so much of the spectrum we haven't kind of tapped into, and that would be interesting, especially since like there's so many movies that are like not no offense Hollywood, but like there's so many movies that we redo. Like it's like we've done this storyline before, we've already done it, or they're like rebooting like a series. Oh, this series has been gone for 10 years, let's do it again. And I'm just like, there are so much wealth of different types of ideas and things you can talk about, and this neurodivergent area, like, or disability area, is a story you can tell, because it's because if you're not telling it enough, then there's a half of people that are not able to relate much to certain characters, because you never, like, if you never see yourself in a movie or a film or any kind of medium, then you kind of are like, okay, I guess I'm missing out on this part. And I do think we have done some stuff, but I think there definitely, like you said, there is like room for improvement. It shouldn't, where it shouldn't be so few and far between. And I do like that. Yeah, we're not doing just like the victim things anymore. And like I like what you said about like sometimes it's the butt of the joke. Like we're always making fun of people that have certain, and it's like it's just supposed to be funny comedy. I know, like especially back then, there's a lot of that, which it's like that's fine, but like there needs to be other jokes too, right? Or other things too, or it shouldn't just. It's always some kind of comic relief all the time, and I feel like you could still have entertainment and still be educational and not do the easy way out of making some stupid joke about something that's like not really actually, not funny for everyone. So I definitely agree with that point that you made. And I also like when like I guess we have another layer in the movie I watched, where it was a deaf girl and a police officer who used to be able to hear and then he became deaf, and that also enabled the deaf girl who had been deaf for her whole life. It showed, even though she wasn't the police officer and she was a hostage, she was able to help him a lot. Like she was able to come from a place of strength regardless of her but like being deaf, actually in some ways being deaf helped in certain ways, kind of thing. And I really like the way they like helped each other. Not to spoil, I've forgotten the name of the movie, but not to spoil too much. And I think and he even talked about his struggles of dealing with like, 1 minute he was able to hear and the next minute he's losing his hearing, and kind of go through how that feels, right? And then I think in Perfect Sense, which I've forgotten the name, I think it's Eva. I think she's like a French actress, I think, and she did this movie called Perfect Sense. I think Ewan McGregor is in it too. I think that's his name. But basically, in it's like everyone's losing their senses, and you're seeing how everyone's how it affects them, and how everyone's trying to help each other get through that, and you really kind of see how difficult like not having certain abilities can be, right? Especially if you weren't born that way, or like the world. I think the movie did a good job of seeing how different the world is, like, and how it's such a different. And I think we can all benefit from trying to understand more about people that are different from us and things like that. And I think that really, in these certain movies, you really get that idea. I think the same thing, and also I think in A Quiet Place, also I think the deaf girl ended up they've I think they ended up, spoiler alert, okay, this has been on for a while, so if you haven't watched it, oh well. But I think they also had a situation where I think it was something about her hearing aid or something. I don't know if that had something to do with helping get rid of the monsters or something like that. And so that, I think it's just nice to see like people just like they're, we're all normal people too. You know what I mean? Like we all have similar wants and needs and desires, are just a little bit different. But it would be cool to see more, like even more of the spectrum, because it's true. There's some, even in anime too, there's some characters like they're not necessarily like they may not be like autistic, or they may not be, uh, but we don't know, like they could be something else, but we don't know. Like it's just kind of like put in there and we don't really explain it really. We're like, well, maybe we don't know, but it's always kind of like mysterious and people are just doing their own like self, just diagnosing the character and putting all this stuff on them and all that, and which is fine. But I think it would be cool to actually say what the characters, what do they have? Do they have something or not? And like explain more about, the different, like, why do they have social cues issues? Why are there things they don't understand? Why are there things that they have trouble communicating with? Which is, I think, would be cool. I think you can put some, because it's true, The Accountant didn't start off as an educational film, but towards the end, and definitely at the end, you're like, oh, wow, this is really, I didn't know this and this and this. This is really interesting. Like, look what they did there, did their research. And then, of course, there's the other side of it, too, where people have and also let me add, another thing was the character Eileen from Supernatural. She was also deaf, and she's deaf in real life. And in the film also, she also is a strong character, and she ends up being like an ally. Okay, Supernatural has been out, like, come on, y'all. If you haven't watched this, I can't help you. But anyway, she ends up being an ally with them and helping them out. And there's no like, and even the main character, we'll say Sam Winchester, even like learn sign language to be able to like talk with her. Well, you know what I mean. And maybe I should say like to communicate with her, I should say. And I think it was just cool to see that she just kind of smoothly was put into the show. It wasn't a big deal that it wasn't kind of, it's like, yeah, there's different types of people in the world that are all, we're all different, but we all kind of connect on, on a human level. And I think that's important, which of course makes me think about our language podcast episode we did about like sign language and how like, should people learn sign language? I mean, for the most part, many people have hands. And I think sign language might be even easier to learn in some ways than other like if I think about like English versus Chinese, like I'm pretty sure that's like the tonal versus non-tonal can be much harder than using sign language, right? And I wonder if that should be a basic, like in school when they're like, oh, you can do French, German, or Spanish. So I'm like, maybe you could add sign language to that, because I feel like if you're not doing the sign language, then there's a whole, I guess for deaf people, there's a whole section of humans or people that like you can't really communicate with. You know what I mean? I mean, granted, obviously there's like, I mean, it's different because like someone that doesn't speak the same language as you, it's like, yeah, you can kind of like, you can't communicate either with them, but I think like it's easier just like you can get a translator out and just show them what you're saying, kind of thing. But if someone's deaf, like, I mean, and you don't have anything to, like, it can be, I think it should behoove us to be more open to that. And like, it might be more difficult to communicate, right? If you don't, or I guess if someone's blind or something, like, and you don't know their language, I don't know. It's getting all mixed up. My point is, I think it would be fair to learn more other languages. And I think sign language is one, which I think is like, it's interesting because I'm like, that's something that everyone, and actually to add, well, I don't know. I'm not sure would it be easier to communicate with sign language with people if you don't know their language and you both like, let's say I don't know. Okay. There's stuff I don't know as much about that. So you guys can let me know. I don't know much about all of sign language and all of that, but I just find it interesting. I think it's it's cool to explore that more and expand our existence or experience more. And because then there's, I guess to connect it, having less representation of different types of people and or not having sign language as an option, like they connect in that we are not getting the full view of human experience. I think like there's a whole another layer of human experience we could have if like we have more representation in films, or maybe we do add sign language as an option to learn in school, even if you're not deaf or dumb or anything, but I think it can still be, useful. And what I thought was interesting too, and I don't know if this is that much of a spoiler, it's a little spoiler. Apparently in Sign of Affection in the anime, I think her family actually doesn't know sign language, which I thought was like, what? Like they don't actually know sign language. Like they use other ways to communicate. And I'm just like, wait, your own family doesn't know, and then you have the person that she's in love, that her love interest, and he does try like learn it. And she has another friend too that does learn sign language. So that was kind of interesting to me too, where like, there's so many, so it's like that character of course has to kind of acclimate and their family has to acclimate because you don't have the sign language to help you communicate, right? So the main thing about to wrap that all up, the main thing is like, I think more representation is good. We're getting more representation, of course, in films, but I think we need a lot more. There's a lot more avenues we can explore, a lot more people on the spectrum that we can explore, more people. Um, and because I mean, even if I speak about myself, like I'm not always seeing characters like me in film. And I don't mean like, oh, they're not Black or not, but like characters that act like me. Because of course we went over how we're neurodivergent, and so like there's certain ways I act differently than other people. I've noticed that the way I perceive things or feel things or connect and things like that. And sometimes I don't always see that character. Sometimes I don't see a character that like is exactly like me, and which is fine. It's okay, but like then there's things that the characters are going through, and I'm just like, I don't like, this is not really me, but okay, Although I will say in anime, it's a little bit easier because I think anime does a lot more. They might not say outright that this character might be neurodivergent, but sometimes the character goes through kind of things that I can, and I think as an anime, like everything's very heightened in anime. Like it's hard to do with real people because like real people are real people, obviously. But with anime, like you can make expressions much bigger. Like you can like they can literally wear their emotions on their sleeves. Like you can actually draw it to look as if like, oh, this person is like feeling. So it's like, oh my God. And I'm like, and I think about how like some of the emotions I feel inside me are like really gigantic and big. And I'm like, do other people feel this way? And then I watch anime and I'm like, oh my God, this character is like the huge dramatic emotions they have on the outside in anime, I feel on the inside, which I don't know if other neurodivergent people, can you understand me? Like I feel like I have different emotions than like atypical people. Atypical, yeah, I think that's what they're called. Or neurotypical, yeah, neurotypical people. And so yeah, so that's kind of probably why I really love anime, because and I think, I mean, not that there aren't awesome stories here, but like anime does tend to push the envelope a lot. Like there's a lot of different types of characters and different goals and different things they're doing and different missions, and like there's there's a whole lot in there. And I think that we could also learn something from that too, where like any character can have, although I will say sometimes, I know maybe it's a cultural thing, but I will say sometimes in anime they do that thing too where like they kind of, the character that's different is kind of the butt of the joke. Like sometimes they kind of do that too, and like, or the character's there as a token character, and I'm kind of like, and I guess it's because it's in a different country. It's like, okay, well maybe it's fine to do that there, but here it's like, oh, that's actually really inappropriate. Like let's not, um, but yeah, and that's what I'll say about that. I mean, there's still, I mean, we probably have to do more research to see how people feel, but I know there's some debates about like the actors who are pretending to be neurodivergent or pretending to have a disability versus the ones that actually do, and like who should be the one to act in that film. The person who's actually deaf, like in Supernatural, that Eileen actress, or the girl from Quiet Place, should it only be people or mostly people that actually have those that are act like that, or have that, have autism, or is it okay to just have people that do the research and act it really well? I mean, it is called acting after all, right? But I do think it's interesting. I think also you've had aside from like the deaf part, we had more disabilities. Like there's another story I read about a guy who was in a wheelchair, and I think Josie and the tiger and the fish, the girl is in a wheelchair, and she's the main character, and she has the main love interest, and that's like the whole thing, and that like um and of course there's a character who has no issue with her being in a wheelchair, but of course she has different thoughts about that, but which is nice too. So it's like, oh, everyone, so yeah, all of us have emotions, all of us go through similar things and think about life in similar ways. And I think if there was more representation about that and we're more open like that, then there could be more inclusion in general, where we're not just like, oh, these people are different, I'm going to stay away. Like, no, it's not like, it's fine. Like I think we should be more open to learning about more people and things like that. And I'm looking forward to them doing more in film and telling more stories, as opposed to like, I mean, like, because some like, let's like, come on, let's be real. There's a lot of stories that are be really repetitive, and like we've already had this story before. Like, come on, there's so many other human experiences we can talk about. I mean, I don't know if it's also because of like the research part, where they have to do more research on it, and that takes time, and or they want to be sensitive to a certain demographic or topic, so they don't want to touch it unless it's something they can connect to, or like, because Oh, the other film that comes to mind is what's that one? I think it was with Bradley Cooper, and it was a little bit different. And what was her name? The one Katniss Everdeen. What's her name? Jennifer Lawrence. It's called The Silver Playbook or something. I think Robert De Niro was in it too. The Silver something Playbook, which I think the characters were considered neurodivergent, right? But like I don't know if we figured out exactly what they had or not. But that also was kind of interesting that they kind of did that and touched on that. And I don't know if Robert De Niro has. I don't know if his kid also is. I've forgotten if his kid is autistic or not. I've forgotten. But regardless, it's interesting to see, and hopefully, as time goes on, you do get a lot more of that occurring. That's all I can say. All I can think to say. I also go on and on for like an hour about like it's like these movies are so cool. I want more.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dagny,
yes.
please. Oh yeah, go ahead.
As we bring it all in. Yes.
Bring it all in. This is gonna be a part 2. Let's be honest. Like,
definitely.
For real.
I feel like we should definitely give ourselves homework to actually look out for films and even books and like series.
Yes.
That are bringing more awareness to neurodivergence and disabilities in this way. And then we can give you, our wonderful listener, a list of like recommendations and things like that. So yes. So all in all, I feel like we are heading in the right direction when it comes to trying to bring representation to our wonderful different demographics. Yes. And there's still a lot of room for expanding that. Yes. And it's also inspiring, actually, of noting how much more can be done in terms of showcasing these types of experiences, as well as owning them for yourself, too, since now they're being more represented. So, are there, for you listening, are there any other movies or books you would like to add to the list that you thought was actually pretty cool in terms of how they represented either neurodivergence or disabilities with one of the characters? Please let us know. We would love to add it to our list too. And if there is any other aspect of this topic you'd like to hear us speak about, let us know, and you might find it in another subsequent episode. So as always, thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate you, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Yeah, I think that's it for now. Until next time, we might do a part 2, because there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot more stuff that we can discuss on this, but representation is always awesome, I think. Okay, well, I think that's it for now. So stay blessed, stay loved. Bye.
Bye. Take care.